today's top tips. So today I want to talk to you about blue roses. It's kind of like a love-hate situation. Not everybody loves them, and some people think they're absolutely amazing. So these are actually the Vandella variety, and you probably recognise Vandella as being more of a champagne, pale peach, kind of deep creamy sort of rose. So this is the Vandella variety, or Vandella blue, and you buy them in and they're already dyed this colour. Now there's different occasions you could use them for. Some brides actually would request blue roses, maybe to complement maybe blue bridesmaids dresses. But maybe if you're doing novelty arrangements, maybe for, I'm going to mention Pride, and you're looking for blue flowers, or maybe even the 4th of July, and you're looking for blue flowers, or maybe something for a group or a club, maybe a golf club or a society, and again blue happens to be your colour. So it's something to think about. They're not always readily available from your supplier, so if you know that you need them, it is worth contacting them in advance and ordering them in advance. So what should you do to them? Well, with all flowers, the first thing you do is remove the plastic from the flowers, okay? What happens with flowers? Flowers all give off a gas called ethylene gas. Ethylene gas is a ripening or a maturing gas, and it is inclined to make the flowers kind of grow old or mature faster. So remove the ethylene, remove the plastic, and that will allow the ethylene gas to escape. The next thing is cut any elastic bands or ties that are holding the stems together. This elastic band was quite loose on this bunch, but sometimes it can be quite tight on the stem of the flower, and that can restrict the water getting up the stem. The next thing I would say to you is invest in a stem stripper, and we have these for sale on our website, flowerschoolisland.com. They're very inexpensive and they're well worth having. They're great for taking off the thorns, and the Vandella rose is quite thorny, okay? And it also removes the foliage. So you probably find individually it's easier to do it is get your stem stripper. Now normally you're going to do this over your bin, but just so that you can see what I'm doing, is grip the stem stripper in your hand and then grab the stem and then just go down. But sometimes you might have to move up and down just slightly, and then just to remove the kind of like the exact point of the thorn, it's just sometimes just kind of like rub it gently up and down it. So it hasn't removed the thorn completely, but as you can see there, it has removed the exact point of it, and that way then it hasn't damaged the stem. Some people are inclined to use their scissors. Don't recommend that, okay? And they open their scissors wide. I don't want to do this to the flower stem, but basically they scratch or scrape up and down the stem of the flower and removing the thorns. What you're doing is you're damaging the stem. You're also kind of like making a hole or a wound on the stem, and any bacteria then can be inclined to get into the flower. So go through all your roses, and individually then, as I said, is remove your thorns and remove your leaves. And then when you have that done, you're ready for the next stage. So when you have your roses cleaned down, an extra thing I do to the roses just to give them an extra little bit of support whilst they're having their first drink. So first of all, with roses, they are inclined to get an airlock in the stem. This happens when the growers actually cut the roses and they're out of water for a short period of time. And this airlock could be anywhere in that stem. And what can happen is, even though you may cut your roses, place them in clean water, the flower will soak up the water, but next of all, it meets the airlock and it can't get past it. Your rose then could be standing up straight. It's a little bit weak after travelling all the way from Holland out of water, and then sometimes what happens is the rose head goes over. We call that breaking its neck. And once that's happened, there's no going back. So what I normally do, and I recommend my students to do it, and again everybody is different, some florists do it, some florists don't, I always do it, is I get my rose heads, okay, and I wrap them, in a short piece of brown paper. Any sort of paper will do, flower wrapping paper, typing paper, not newspaper, because sometimes the print can come off the newspaper. I secure it with a small piece of sellotape, and what that does is supports the roses whilst having their first drink. But also what it does is it holds them back. So you know, in warm weather where the roses are inclined to blow open. Now if it were a wedding and you want them to blow, that's absolutely fine. But maybe you have them in a couple of days in advance, maybe the weather is very warm, and you don't want them to blow quite as fast. The paper will actually hold them back and stop them blowing open too fast. Next thing is have your vase prepared. Now, with all our vases, or buckets if you're in a flower shop, we bleach them all with Blue Domestos, like the actual bleach, okay? So with Blue Domestos bleach, we sterilise all our buckets. And if you go to our blog page on our website, flowerschoolireland.com, I do have some tutorials there on how to basically prepare all your buckets and vases for your fresh flower delivery. So then what I recommend is fill your vase halfway or just over the halfway mark with clean water. And the fresher the water, the better, because there'll be more oxygen in it. I like to add a sachet of flower food to the water. And most times I place the flower food in the vase before I actually top it up with water, and that way then it gets kind of mixed up and dissolved. But just for the tutorial, I wanted you to see this. So basically you get your sachet, cut off the top, and then you can add that to your water. And again, because I haven't actually placed it in first, I'll just give it a little bit of a swish around just to make sure that it's well dissolved. Now the next things I want to show you depends on maybe how commercial you are and if you're in a flower shop situation. By the way, the flower food can be bought in a liquid form as well. Personally, I prefer the powder. Now I did mention about the airlocks in the stem. So there is a way of preventing airlocks, or basically getting rid of the airlocks. So this is a chemical that you can buy. Different companies make it, and it's often known by a quick dip, but in some countries it's called magic dip. Okay, so this one is called quick dip. So all the direction is on the back of the bottle, so maybe have a read of it. But normally what I do is I place about 2-3 centimetres. In the end, I'm using a disposable cup, okay, but you can use like a container that can be washed. So place about 2 or 3 centimetres in the end of your container. And I find the smaller the container, the better, because if you're using a very large vase or bucket, it's going to use a lot of the solution, and it is quite expensive. So then what you do is you get your roses. Now we normally recommend taking a good inch off the end of the stems, but you can see these are quite long, and it depends what you want them for. So if you find that you are going to be cutting them shorter eventually, is maybe take 2 inches or 3 inches off the end of the stem. Now I recommend cutting on a 45-degree angle, and again you can use your secateurs, you can cut them all together at the one time, or again you can cut them individually like I'm doing here. So cut them on a 45-degree angle. That way then you're opening up a bigger hole than if you cut straight across, just to demonstrate on a stem. If you cut straight across, you're making a circle. When you cut on a 45-degree angle, you're making a kind of more oval shape. So that way there's more area for the flower to drink up water. Flowers naturally, when they're cut, they will immediately suck up water. So don't delay in this process, even though I'm just explaining a couple of extra tips. Now, because I've cut the stems on an angle, that's why I like there to be 2 or 3 centimetres of the quick dip in the container, to make sure when I dip them in that all the stem is submerged in the quick dip. And it's literally in and out, you know what I mean? 1-2 seconds is absolutely plenty. And then what you do is you immediately add it to your clean water. Now I like to leave that paper on at least for the first hour while they have their first drink. This is the most important time for the flowers, the very first drink. You're hydrating the stems. Some flowers like to maybe just place them immediately into the water when they arrive and then take them back out and then do all the conditioning and the treatment. But I kind of find that's double jobbing. So I like to do it exactly how I've shown it here during this demonstration. But obviously if you're working for a florist, you know what I mean, you do what your florist prefers or what she advises you to do. Now with these roses, you shouldn't work with these roses for at least 4 hours. But I would prefer the longer the better. Again, these flowers have come direct from Holland. So basically they have been out of water up to 30 hours at this stage. So I would prefer to give these roses at least 8 to 12 hours drink before you use them. But if you ever buy flowers yourself, even if they've been in water in your local supermarket or your local flower shop, like what you should do is when you condition and treat them is give them a minimum of 4 hours. In 1 hour you can then remove the paper, and what will happen then is the roses will start to blow. But if you would prefer to keep the roses that little bit tighter, or as I said, if the weather was warm or you had a wedding in a couple of days time, it gives you that choice where you can hold them back a little bit. Or what you could do is you could wrap half of the roses and hold them back, and then the other half of the roses you could leave unwrapped and they will blow naturally for you. Hopefully you've picked up a couple of tips and hints there. If you follow us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Kay's Flower School. You will find lots of top tip videos there. If you do have any questions, just place them in the comments below. And if you're watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. Thanks for joining. My name is Janette and I'm from Kay's Flower School.